Hey YouTubers, welcome to my channel Andrea René Abroad, where I talk about Peace Corps travel and working abroad. I'm a returned Peace Corps volunteer who served in Nicaragua from August of 2016 to April of 2018. For the past 2 weeks, I've uploaded 2 videos that were bilingual videos that I videotaped with my former host sister from Peace Corps Nicaragua in Germany, where she is now living. So I thought I would create a video about learning a language during Peace Corps, as I think it's probably a topic on a lot of people's minds, particularly those of you who are departing as monolinguals, people who only speak one language. In the first half of this video, I'm going to discuss what the language learning process is for Peace Corps, and in the second half, I'll talk a little bit about my own experience of language acquisition. So some of the Peace Corps posts require you to have prior language knowledge. Generally speaking, these will be the posts that are in Spanish-speaking countries and in French-speaking countries. And that's just because there is already a lot of people in the United States who study either French or Spanish during high school or college, so already have a basic language understanding of these different languages. So just because there are so many different people who apply to Peace Corps, they post a lot of the positions as having a language requirement for Spanish or French, just to weed out different people. If you're applying to a country that speaks Spanish or French, it will probably be a good idea to already speak a little bit of those languages, just because you will be competing against other applicants who already have knowledge in these languages. Now, I'm not saying you can't volunteer in those countries and that you won't be accepted to volunteer in those countries, but I'm just saying that there are already a lot of applicants with knowledge of those languages, so you will be less competitive if you don't speak those languages. Now, there are other countries where Peace Corps exists and, you know, nobody really in the United States, or at least a very small number of people, speak those languages, so it is not required for you to learn the language or know the language prior to applying. So when you first arrive in country, and I'm talking about within the first 2 or 3 days, you will be tested on your language proficiency of the language. Now, I will say that I served in Peace Corps Nicaragua, so this is just on my own experience. It might be different in the country where you are serving, but my guess is that it will be at least a little bit similar to what I experienced. Now, the cool thing about Peace Corps is the language proficiency interview that you will have at the beginning of your service and at the end of your service is accredited by the American Council of Teachers of Foreign Languages. So it's actually something that you can put on your resume at the end of your service as being however proficient you are in that particular language. The different levels of language proficiency are divided into 4 main categories and then divided into 3 subcategories each. So the first level is novice, which means you don't speak the language at all. Next is beginner, then intermediate, then advanced, and then superior. So obviously superior is the highest, and for this particular level there is no subcategories. You just go straight from advanced high to superior. Now, within those 4 subcategories are low, mid, and high. So for example, you could enter the Peace Corps being intermediate low. So this would be one example, or you could enter being beginner high. But basically all it is they will have a native speaker who will be likely one of your teachers later on during training. They will just have a conversation with you, and then they're recording the conversation, and then they'll go back and listen to it and then give you a proficiency rating. So it's really nothing to be scared about, but it will determine which training town you will be in, because you will be divided by language group for training. For example, if you tested into intermediate, you will be in a training town with other people who also tested as intermediate. If you tested into advanced, you will be in a training town with other people who also tested into advanced. You will have a language proficiency interview, an LPI, 4 times during your service, or at least I did. Well, actually I had 3, but I'll get to that in a second. So the first time is within a few days of getting into country, so they can determine which training town you will be sent to. The second time is only for people who originally tested into novice, beginner, or intermediate. And that is halfway through PST, pre-service training. If you are in the advanced group, you will not have a LPI halfway through training, and that's just because if you're already in the advanced category, it's gonna take you a lot longer to, say, move from advanced low to advanced high. So they won't bother testing you then. The third time that you will have a language proficiency interview will be at the very end end of training, at the end of PST, and then finally, the very last time that you will have an LPI is at your COS. Just a note on the very end. I myself, as you all know, actually ended my service early because Peace Corps Nicaragua was evacuated. All 168 of us were evacuated. But we all were still able to do our LPI for our close of service over the phone. So if you are medically evacuated, medically separated, administratively separated, if you have an early termination, any of these, you are still entitled to have your language proficiency interview, which will be accredited by the American Council of Teachers of Foreign Languages, which you can still put on your resume. So do not worry about this. You are entitled to your LPI no matter what. One note about the LPI at the end of training: if you do not reach a certain level, which will be determined by your host country of service, if you do not reach a certain level of proficiency, then you will either be asked to leave and you will not get to swear in as a Peace Corps volunteer, or if you are super close, like let's say your country of service says that you need to be a beginner high at the end of training and you end a beginner mid, they might be able to help you with a little bit of additional support and tutoring your first 1 to 2 months of service. So don't freak out, but you should be working really hard. So let's go ahead and transition into my own experience with the LPI and language during service. So as probably a lot of you have already realized, I am a simultaneous bilingual. What does that mean? That means that I was raised in a bilingual household with one parent who is a native speaker of English, my dad, and a native Spanish speaker, my mom, and I grew up speaking both languages simultaneously. In case that word is completely new to you, there are actually 3 kinds of bilinguals, which I'll break down for you guys. So there is a simultaneous bilingual, which is how I identify, and a lot of Americans who are the children of immigrants also identify as being a simultaneous bilingual. Another kind of bilingual is an additive bilingual. So that means you were born in a monolingual household or culture, and then you learned a second language. So there are a lot of additive bilinguals in the United States. You only speak one language when you're little, and then maybe you go on to learn a language in either high school or college. The third kind of bilingual is a subtractive bilingual. Now, this is really sad and can happen for multiple reasons. So this is someone who was born in a situation where they speak 2 languages, or maybe they spoke a different language than they do now as an adult, but they have unfortunately forgotten that language and can no longer speak it for whatever reason. So those are the 3 kind of bilinguals that exist. As I said before, I'm a simultaneous bilingual, so I grew up speaking Spanish and English in my house, and then I did study Spanish in high school, and then I also was a double major in college, just because I felt like I didn't have academic Spanish and I wanted to learn academic Spanish. I don't want to get way too teachery with my lingo, but basically as a kid I was able to have BICS, which stands for Basic Interpersonal Communication Skills, and then I wanted to add CALP, which is Cognitive Academic Language Proficiency. So basically I had grown up with BICS, and then I wanted to have my ability to have CALP. So then I actually decided to double major in English and Spanish. English because that was my passion, and then Spanish so I could actually have academic proficiency in Spanish. When I first applied to Peace Corps, obviously I already was able to prove my language abilities, because working up to leaving for Peace Corps, they actually encouraged us to do Duolingo prior to departure, and so I kind of begrudgingly agreed to do it, and I did it, and I think I learned like 1 new word. So when I first did my language proficiency interview when I got to Nicaragua 2 days into country, I was really nervous, and I know I just told you guys not to be nervous about it, but I was just nervous about it because I had grown up as a simultaneous bilingual, and I like felt that it would be, I don't know, shameful if I got anything lower than advanced. So I was really nervous, and I had my LPI interview, and luckily I got advanced mid. So when I arrived at Peace Corps, I was advanced mid with my Spanish, which was totally like digestible for me. I was like, yeah, that's okay. Then I went through training, and as I said, because I was advanced, none of the advanced group does a LPI in the middle of their training, in the middle of their PST. And then at the end of my PST, I did another LPI, and I was really, really disappointed, and I was honestly kind of upset about it because I was still an advanced mid at the end of training. I don't know, it just was like upsetting because I was like, okay, why did I just spend 3 months studying Spanish and I haven't improved? So I remember being like pretty frustrated, and actually a lot of the other people in my group were also simultaneous bilinguals. Most of my group did not improve during training, which was like really, really frustrating to us. Yeah, just because we had spent so much time, but it was fine. And so I went on to serve my 2 years in Nicaragua, and then we were evacuated. And then after, I had my LPI interview over the phone, and I was so excited because I got superior at the end of my service, which was just like everything I could have ever wanted. Just like, as the daughter of an immigrant, you know, I really had to make the esfuerza to learn how to speak Spanish. So it just meant the world to me that I was able to get superior by the end of my service, and obviously it was really exciting for my mom as well. So hopefully this video answered a lot of your questions that you had about an LPI, but if there's anything else at all that you would like to know about language proficiency during Peace Corps or just being bilingual, please feel free to comment below. I have no problem answering your questions. All right, folks, I'll see you all next week.